Transport of organic substances in the phloem. Describe the mass flow hypothesis for the transport of organic substances in the phloem and explain the evidence for and against the mass flow hypothesis. So translocation is where organic molecules and mineral ions are transported around the plant. And the phloem is the vessel that transports organic molecules. So the phloem is made up of sieve tube elements, which are long, thin structures which are arranged end to end, and their end walls are perforated to form sieve plates, and they are associated with companion cells. So after producing sugars in photosynthesis, the plant transports the sugars from the sites of production, the sources, to the places where they'll be used or stored, which are called the sinks. And the sinks can be anywhere in the plant. They can either be above or below the source. It could be above at the flowers or below at the roots. So translocation in the phloem can be in either direction. And organic molecules that are transported include sucrose, amino acids, inorganic ions such as potassium, chloride, phosphate, and magnesium ions. So materials are transported in the phloem, and the rate of movement is too fast to be explained by diffusion. But the mechanism by which translocation is achieved is currently unknown. So at the moment we have a hypothesis to explain it, but we don't actually know that this is definitely the way it happens. But the hypothesis we use at the moment is called the mass flow theory. And this theory can be divided into 3 phases. So the first phase is a transfer of sucrose into sieve elements from photosynthesising tissue. So sucrose is made from the products of photosynthesis, and sucrose diffuses down its concentration gradient by facilitated diffusion from the photosynthesising cells into the companion cells. And hydrogen ions are actively transported from the companion cells into spaces within the cell walls using ATP. So then these hydrogen ions then diffuse down a concentration gradient through carrier proteins into the sieve tube elements. Sucrose molecules are transported along with the hydrogen ions in a process known as co-transport. The protein carriers are therefore known as co-transport proteins. The second stage is mass flow. So mass flow is the bulk movement of a substance through a channel in a certain time. And the mass flow of sucrose through sieve tube elements takes place as follows. So the sucrose produced by the photosynthesising cells, or the source, is actively transported into the sieve tubes as described in step 1, and this causes the sieve tubes to have a lower or more negative water potential. And as the xylem has a higher or less negative water potential, water moves from the xylem into the sieve tubes by osmosis, creating a high hydrostatic pressure in them. As the respiring cells, or the sink, are respiring, they use the sucrose up in respiration, or they convert that sucrose into starch. And therefore these cells have a low sucrose concentration. So sucrose is actively transported into them from the sieve tubes, which lowers their water potential. And due to this lowered water potential, the water also moves into these respiring cells from the sieve tubes by osmosis. The hydrostatic pressure of the sieve tubes in this part is therefore lowered. Because water enters the sieve tube elements at the source and is leaving at the sink, there is a high hydrostatic pressure at the source and a low one at the sink. Therefore, there's a mass flow of sucrose solution down the hydrostatic pressure gradient in the sieve tubes. So although mass flow itself is passive, it does actually happen because of the process of active transport of sugars. Therefore, the whole process, the process as a whole, is active, which is why it is affected by temperature and metabolic poisons. So transfer of sucrose from the sieve tube elements into storage or other sink cells. So the sucrose is actively transported by companion cells out of the sieve tubes and into the sink cells. So that is the end of the mass flow theory. Next time I'll go over the evidence for and against the mass flow theory.